truly squeeze 9 people in one of those cages. However, there's only 6 of you, including the other guy, so you should have some breathing room there. So to give you just a small idea of what 1,000 feet looks like, if you look out the window over here, you can see the small town of Cripple Creek. They're sitting right around 400 feet beneath us. You're going to travel another 600 feet beneath them. Now, on your way down the shaft today, you're going to pass by a red light. That's level 400 of the mine, so it marks the same level as Cripple Creek. You know beneath them. Now your shaft ride to the bottom is pretty quick, takes you only 2 minutes to get down there. You travel at a rate of roughly 500 feet per minute. Now once you make it to the bottom, you'll have plenty of space to walk around and take pictures. We just ask that you watch your steps. We have this mine rail laid throughout the mine. It's pretty easy to trip over it. Now your tour guide today, his name is Kelly. Now Kelly has worked underground before, so if you have any questions about how the mining's done or the history of it, feel free to ask him along your tour. He'll be more than happy to answer those for you. Now, his work here at the Mollie is very seasonal. He only works here about 6 months out of the year before we shut down for the winter, so he does kind of rely on gratuities just to help him make it through the winter. Now, once you're done with your tour, you're going to load back onto your cages. You're going to come up to the surface. He's going to give you back your tickets. This is just giving him a head count, making sure he brought everybody out of the hole here safe and sound today. So that's all I have for y'all. You have any questions for me? All right, we'll go ahead and get y'all loaded on your cages here. We'll start off with the 2 tall gentlemen there. Yeah. Watch your head as you go in. Put your back to that wall. Take 2 minutes. You're going to step in front of your husband there. You're going to step right next to him against that ladder.
They can get 9 people in here?
No. Maybe workers.
And then, ma'am, we'll have you put your back to this wall here. Actually, we might put Randall in first. We'll have you step out, we'll put Randall in, and then you and Kelly. I forgot Randall was jumping on this one as well, so just back over there for Randall. There we go.
Me here?
You're going to stay right here, because Kelly's going to stand there as well. So if you'll just slide over to sideways.
Oh, this way?
So, perfect.
So you can get 3 more guys in here, huh? Amazing.
I can't believe that.
All right, buddy, we'll see you in a little bit.
You won't need seatbelts.
All right. I think there's a song called "Keep Your Hands to Yourself."
I can't move mine, so don't worry.
Alright, so as you descend down the mine shaft, you actually see 4 other levels before you reach the bottom.
Wow.
The first level you guys will see will be the front of us where we came in at 200 feet. You saw that light bulb right there, that's 100 feet already.
How many levels are there?
There's 5 levels total in this mine. So here's 200 feet. The next level you guys will see will be a red light to your back over there. When you see that red light, that's 400 feet of mine shaft and the same depth as the town of Cripple Creek as well.
Wow. How many feet were all the mine drifts?
They varied in size.
How many total they were? There's the fire, I think. Yeah. Wow.
There's hundreds of tunnels down here.
Huh.
There was 400 feet, so we're halfway down now. The next level you guys will see will be in front of us again at 600 feet. And this is where the ride gets a little bumpy, but that is completely normal as well. Here's 600. The last level you guys will see, you can look either in front or behind, that's 700 feet.
Huh. There it is. Wow.
Alright, once you step when you get off the cage, get your hand if you help.
It's more below us. That's water.
Yep, there is water down there. It goes up to 50 feet. That's dust down there.
It is.
All right, everybody, welcome down to the bottom of the Mollie Kathleen mine. My name is Kelly. What we're standing in is a crosscut. Crosscuts are main tunnels that lead from a mine shaft or a portal entrance. We just came down the mine shaft, but a portal entrance is an entrance to the mine. We were able to walk directly into that mine. You do not have to immediately descend down the mine shaft. So as we walk down this crosscut, if you guys could please stay in between the rails, it does seem to be the safest way to walk down here. And you are more than welcome to take pictures down here as well. Now, the Mollie Kathleen mine opened up in 1891. When we opened up, we had to use hand tools. So the very first method I'm going to talk to you guys about is single jacking. That's where one miner would take a starter steel, just like you see in my hands right here. Now, they're going to use this hammer, and each time they hit the steel, they're going to turn it a quarter of a way. What this does is burrows out that perfect hole, and it's going to bring the dust out as well. When the miner can no longer drill in the wall using these starter steels, though, they're going to have to upgrade to this drill piece and work the way all the way up to this piece. These holes can take up to 20 hours, depending on how experienced you were to do these holes as well.
Wow.
Oh yeah. Now, when they had enough room in the mine, they do what's called double jacking, and that's what we have right over here. The miner sitting down, he's going to be known as a shaker, and he's actually holding the bowl of steel on his shoulders right there, if you guys are able to see that. And then the guy behind him, he's known as a striker. Every time that striker hits the bowl steel, the shaker will turn it a quarter of a way. But they do switch off periodically, so if you hit your partner in the back of the head, you better watch out. It turns coming. But to give you guys an idea of the conditions that they worked in, back in those days, they didn't have electricity, and in a normal functioning mine, they would not hang up lights like you see above us. So back then, each miner got 3 candles per shift, just like you see on this gentleman's hat right here. That candlelight will look something just like this.
Wow.
Oh yeah. So as you can see, not a lot of room and not a lot of light, so you have to be very careful about where you're working and how you swing that hammer.
How many hours a day would an average worker work?
Well, back then they could work anywhere up to 12 hours, but most of the time it's 10-hour shifts. But eventually they found out about carbide lamps. These were originally created in Europe so you could ride your bikes at night. What you would do is put calcium carbide down here at the bottom, and that looks a lot like cat litter. And then you put water up here at the top. Using this nozzle at the very top, you can control that drip flow of water into the calcium carbide. That's going to create a acetylene gas, and that leaks out right here where the miner can light that flame. Now, if you look at this gentleman right here, he's dressed in his street clothes. That's a good indication of an inexperienced miner, or what they call the tenderfoot. Back in the old days, tenderfoots actually wore carbide lamps on these hard hats, just like you see right here. The problem with that is these flames can be carried away with a strong gust of wind. So if you're looking down and someone's swinging a hammer next to you, you could burn off parts of your eyebrows or even your beard, and that's how you could tell about if there was a new guy around if they were no longer wearing street clothes. Nowadays, we actually use a battery pack to go for 72 hours. You can see mine's actually attached to my belt, and we use an LED bulb. They have 2 different settings. This is dim, and then we have a bright setting as well. So they can be a miner's best friend down here. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and walk down this next part of the tunnel. This will be the only tunnel that you guys walk through that has very little light, so please watch where you step. Now, when you guys get in here, go ahead and line up on this side of the wall right over here. And we'll be looking to your left first. Now, we will be talking about blasting here in a little bit. But once you get done with those blasts, you're going to have all that ore, or what they call muck, down in the ground. And you guys can get a closer look if you guys want. But this gentleman right here, he's known as a hand mucker. It was his job to shovel up all that ore and fill up this 1-ton ore cart, 1.5 times to 2 times an hour. If he couldn't meet that quota, he was fired, just like that. Back in the old days, they had miners lined up on the surface of these mines waiting for people who couldn't meet their quotas so they could come down here and replace them that day.
And what did they earn per hour back then? Or
Actually,
per day?
it was per day. Anyone with their feet firmly planted down here on the ground over the age of 16 got paid $3 a day.
Wow.
Now, if you guys are familiar with a little bit of Cripple Creek and Victor history, we had a gentleman up here who grew up to be the world heavyweight boxing champion. His name was Jack Dempsey. What many people don't know is he actually used to be one of these hand muckers down here, and he unfortunately did not have the stamina to keep up with the rest of the miners. Wow. If you guys do want to find out where his first fight was, that was at Victor Town Hall, about 6 miles away, and that building still stands today if you guys want to check that out as well. But you guys are more than welcome to get as close to this chain as you guys want to now, because I'll be talking about this machine next. Now, this is the Code 12B mucker. An experienced miner can use this machine and fill up this 1 ton work cart in as little as 10 minutes. Now, we do demonstrate a lot of equipment for you guys down here, and it can be pretty noisy, so I'll always give you guys a heads up before I turn that equipment on. So if you want to cover your ears, you guys are more than welcome to do so now. Now, some of you guys might have noticed that when I brought this bucket up, my head was nowhere near it. Back then, if a miner's not paying enough attention, if they bring it up fast enough, it can seriously injure or even kill that miner as well. Now, real quick, before we leave this area, if you want to take a look over here to your right, you'll see a sign that says the Gold King Crosscut on it. As I said before, crosscuts are main tunnels that will take you to or from the entrance of a mine. This one actually leads into the Gold King mine, and we'll learn more about that here in a little bit. Excuse me. But we could also use this tunnel to escape the mine as well, in case there's a rare occurrence of a cave-in or some emergency like that as well. But I will talk more about veins that miners start following, that they create drifts, and we'll be walking down a drift next. So if you guys want to take a look, right behind this light is a Jubilee Davis drift. That's the first side tunnel we'll be walking down.
I take a lot of pictures.
Yeah.
None of the mines in Nevada have a lot of amethyst and all kinds of crystals.
Huh.
That's just pretty cool rock that they're mining.
What are these crystals along the sides?
You know the white stuff that you're seeing? That is magnesium sulfate or Epsom salt.
Oh.
We have other minerals that are down here, and we'll point them out as we see more of them. And we talked about this Epsom salt right here because you can see a lot more of it.
Wow.
What this Epsom salt just naturally reaches our walls around us. It's not enough to get down here, and it's not valuable enough, so they just let us sit down here. If you guys aren't familiar with Epsom salt, they also use it as a natural laxative, so we don't suggest you guys hit the walls. You'd be surprised how many people have done that.
Really?
Oh yeah. But anyways, at the turn of the 19th century, they came out with this column drill or this line drill. Now, all the equipment that we have powered up down here has been either converted to or runs on compressed air, so this was originally steam powered. But this drill weighed 200 pounds and it took 2 people to operate. You'd start off with your starter steel, which is now 2 feet long, which is right here. Once you got done drilling that 2-foot hole, you go from your 4-foot steel to your 6-foot steel. And then once you get done drilling that 6-foot hole, you start packing it with sticks of black powder dynamite, just like you see in that case right there. And then once you got done with that hole, you could move this drill either left or right on this column right here, or up or down on this column right here, wherever your next hole is going to be drilled. I will also demonstrate this for you guys. If you want to cover your ears, you're more than welcome to. Now, back then, miners didn't have any form of hearing protection, but they were down here constantly smoking cigarettes. They quickly realized that you could take the butts off the end of those cigarettes, put them in your ears, and that's what they use for protection.
Wow.
So once you got done drilling all your holes, you have this blasting setup. Now right here in the middle, you'll notice that this hole is completely empty. This is known as your reliever hole. Now that's not completely empty, so when these sticks of dynamite go off, they start pushing that ore to a place so it has a place to start crumbling to. But we'll start off with the 5-hole burn, which is right here in the middle. Then next to go off will be the ribs on the sides, the backs up top, and then the knee holes. But down here at the very bottom are 3 sticks of dynamite drilled at a 30-degree angle. They're the last to go off. They're also the most important. When these lifter holes go off, they actually bring all the ore that's already been knocked loose right here where we're standing, so we can just shovel it on and just keep on moving. However, the one downfall to using sticks of black powder dynamite is they can freeze anywhere below 55 degrees. Down here in this level, it stays 50 degrees year-round, whether it's 80 degrees or negative 30 up top. So miners would usually have what's called a DuPont stick warmer up there at the hoist house next to a fire, and then when they're ready to blast, miners would bring that sticks of dynamite down here, pack it in as tight as they can and as fast as they can, light the fuses, then they want to run back to about where the mine shaft is from where we're standing so they can count those shots. If for any reason they think some of those shots did not go off, that new guy who's already lost his eyebrows would get this miner spoon. And then he would have to come back here and try and fish out any sticks of dynamite that still might be stuck in these holes. Yeah, not very smart. They did later find out that it's a lot easier and it's more effective if you just flush the holes out with water. That will also bring the dynamite out. So we'll go ahead and move on to this next drill over here.
That must have been nitro?
All right, now this is the jackleg drill, and it was created in the 1950s. It only weighs about 90 pounds and only takes 1 miner to operate, and it only uses one size drill still. When I turn this drill on, you'll be able to see this leg do most of the work for me, hence the name of the jackleg drill as well. It will be kind of loud, so if you want to cover your ears again, you're more than welcome to. Another thing that they changed would be the form of dynamite, which is now wet gel dynamite, and that's sort of a moist clay. We would take these 1/3 primer sticks, and that goes into each one of these holes first, followed by what they call pro beads or ammonium nitrate. The official name for this, though, is Anfo mix, and this is unfortunately the stuff that they used in the Oklahoma City attacks a few years ago. Now, the problem with these pro beads or this ammonium nitrate, though, is if you've messed up on these blasting patterns, you can't just scoop it back out because it packs in there so tightly. So you would have to take one of these jackleg drills and very carefully drill that Anfo mix back out as well. Now, unfortunately, we don't have any dynamite to demonstrate for you guys, but we do have a recording for you guys to listen to. It won't be very loud, so you guys don't have to worry about covering your ears. All right, now you guys heard that on 22. My brother and me, we started here at the same year, and I didn't always check the volume on the CD player. My brother thought it'd be funny. He turned that all the way up to 32. My next group was actually a group full of Girl Scouts, and I had to take them right back to the surface because I didn't check that volume. So,
Oh, no.
yeah, I always check the volume from now on. But anyways, as I was talking about earlier, the equipment that we use down here is used compressed air. This is going to be your best visual of that compressed air line right here coming up your left. So we'll go ahead and walk down this tunnel. So we have 3 air compression tanks on the surface right behind the door where you guys have a hard pack. We use that to pump the air down here into the mine. Now, I'll show you a better example here in a little bit, but if you just want to look to your right real quick, you'll see one of the air receiver tanks that we use to store the air down here. Once it's down here, so you don't always have to continue to pump air down.
Did you work in this mine with your brother, or, I mean, did you work in this
Oh,
mine?
the mine actually closed down in 1961, long before my time.
Oh, okay.
But we'll talk more about why the mines closed down in this area here in a little bit, and why only a few of them are active. And when you guys get over here, you're more than welcome to get as close as you guys want. Take a look all the way up to what we call a raise. Now, when miners are looking for gold, they're going to follow a vein that they call fluorite, and it's kind of purplish in color. It can be darker as well. This is one example. Another example is right where my light is, and that runs up and down. So as you can see, we have veins that run horizontally and vertically. So when the miners ran across veins that ran up and down, they quickly realized that instead of drilling down directly on top of that vein, it's a lot easier to drill below that vein, and come down below it. Excuse me, and let gravity do the work for you. This is what we call stope drilling, and this is just the beginning of the stope. We'll see a 44-1 here in a little bit. So they call this a raise. If you see that flat board right there, that's a drilling platform. That's where a miner stands with a stope drill, and you can actually see that in this picture. But we will see this drill in person as well. But you can see a miner standing on that drilling platform. He's hammering in the rock directly above them. What that's going to do is knock the rocks around them loose, so they'll come down around this drilling platform, and they can land on this ledge right here, excuse me. Now, we have another miner over here with what we call slusher bucket. And there's a close-up example right here. I'll show you guys how that works here in a couple minutes. But using this slusher bucket, we can pull all that ore down to one of these chutes where it's going to automatically load up into the ore car. So when we have a stope drilling operation, we no longer need those hand muckers, those mucking machines I demonstrated earlier. Excuse me real quick. And we'll demonstrate this slusher for you guys. If you want to get up here, you're more than welcome to. So it was really easy to just move the rocks back and forth instead of having miners use shovels and just picking up those bigger rocks and trying to carry them. Now, before we leave this area, I do want to let you guys know that we used to use donkeys back in the mines to move the ore cars to and from the mine shaft. We will talk more about those animals when we come across their stables. But first we're going to see one of those displays that you can see in this picture. They call that one an air locomotive. Before the air locomotive, they had what's called the Perry Gortner air tram or the air donkey, and we're going to see that first. Now, Perry Gortner is actually Mollie Kathleen's son. We're going to go ahead and keep walking.
Okay.
Perry Gortner was Mollie Kathleen's son, and he read an article about the old homestead mine in South Dakota and about the equipment that they were using in 1920. He thought, how hard could it be? And he created the air donkey prototype. This was also run on steam powered. It is very small, which is why we don't stop and talk about it, but I want to let you guys know what you're about to see before we come across it as well. So coming up on your right will be that Perry Gortner tram or the air donkey. As you can see, it's very small. We're going to keep on moving. Now, as we get along this tunnel, you're going to see parts of green, yellow, and a little bit of what looks like chewing tobacco. The green is oxidized copper, the yellow, the well would be sulfur, and that you're also looking at chewing tobacco color is oxidized iron. We got a better visual over here one as well.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I'll be getting that to you guys later as well. Okay. So as you guys can see, there are other minerals down here. They're just not worth mining, so we let them sit down here. But after a couple years, they hired a mine superintendent by the name of Shirley Johnson, who saw that air donkey idea, and he decided to improve upon it, and he created the first air locomotive. Now, these machines are pretty much identical, except for the size of the tanks that are attached to them, and that this one also ran on compressed air instead of steam powered. This could also move 3 more ore cars compared to that air donkey that could only move 1 as well. But right behind this air locomotive, you can see that chute that I was talking about. So the stope miners would be up there, they're going to be hammering into the rock. Rock would fall down these stopes, load up here, and you can take it right to the mine shaft. It's pretty simple. Now, if you guys have been to Cave of the Winds, or any of those caves that talk about stalactites or stalagmites, they'll tell you that they can take up to thousands of years to form. However, you can see we have stalactites forming above us. These can grow pretty quickly within the year. A lot of people have already broken them off this year, but that's because we have a lot of moisture minerals above us that allow all that stalactite and water to collect. Excuse me. Now, you guys are more than welcome to get take a closer look behind this air locomotive if you want. Behind this chute is actually a column, which means the stalactite and stalagmite came together and connected. And it just looks like a solid icicle from the ceiling all the way down to the ground. It depends on the area. Most of the time, we didn't find anything above 15 ounces at a time. That was pretty expensive. Yeah, but there are a couple mines that you stumble across as high as 50 ounces at a time.
I was just in that fluorite copper was.
Yeah, well, they call them the vein, and then you. Yep. Now, when we closed out in 1961, it wasn't because we grabbed all the gold out of the mine. It was actually because the price of gold is so low that the smelting mill in the district could no longer turn a profit. So when the smelting mill closed down, it forced many of the mines to close down as well. Now, the total depth of this mine is actually 1,050 feet, and that was in that mine shaft. The extra 50 feet is where we let the excess water build up. We drain that every day. But the deepest mine that we have in the area is the Ajax mine. It is 3,500 feet down. Now, the main reason why we don't have a lot of active, we're going to go ahead and keep walking this way though, but the main reason why we don't have any active mines nowadays is because miners are very superstitious. It's actually considered bad luck to reopen the closed mine.
So once it's closed forever.
Yep. Our owner, his sons, for the last couple of years, have actually tried to get him to come down here and mine, and for that one superstition, he'll never reopen it up to grab gold out.
Huh.
Now, what I have in my hand is one of the very first models of stope drill, and this was called the wiggle tail stope drill. Now, a miner would stand on a drilling platform, just like you see right below it, and spend their entire shift wiggling this back and forth, so that this piece of steel does not get stuck in the rock above. However, when they're using these drills, they're creating fractured rock particles in the dust directly above the miner, and they're going to breathe most of that in. That's silicosis of the lungs. Back then, any miner who got diagnosed with silicosis was lucky to make it past the age of 45. So realizing that something had to change, they created this jack tank full of water, and they took drill stills, just like you see in my hands, and they drilled holes right through the middle of them, so that they could shoot that water right up through the steel. Now this piece of steel is pretty old, that hole's clogged up, but you can see that it was formed right there in the middle. Oh, right here in the steel, sir.
Yeah.
So that way, as they are working, they can shoot water up through. It's going to keep it a tad bit cooler, so it doesn't have to be repaired as often. It also turns a lot of that dust in the mud, so they no longer have to breathe all that silicosis in as well. But over here, we have a working model of the stope drill. It was just like the one you saw in that picture, so you can see it's going to rotate for us. Does most of the work already, and it's already hooked up to a jack tank. However, this is the loudest exhibit we have in the mine, so I do strongly encourage you guys to cover your ears. Now, when I turned this drill off, you guys saw it slowly descend down to the ground, and then all of a sudden I hit this button. This is a miner's kill switch, so if he felt himself losing control of this drill, all you have to do is push down on this button, it'll immediately release the air and make sure that the miner doesn't get any serious injuries. Excuse me. Now, the next area that we're going to be looking at is the Queen Bess stope. It's the largest display that we have in North America. Before you take a look at this stope, there's a picture to the left of when they found it. It's a pretty neat piece of history. You can see them using tools and candles. But once you guys get a chance to take a look at this picture, go ahead and line up on the side of the wall and make this good machine, please. All right, now this is the Queen Vestal. It is the largest display that we have in North America. It goes up 740 feet. Now, when this was a functioning mine, we would have had one of those chutes that I showed you right here next to this ladder. But we took this out so you guys can see the fluorite vein on the side of the wall right there where my light is. And you can see it's actually pretty big. We do vary in size.
That's okay.
And then if you take a look at that monitor up there on the drilling platform, excuse me, he's a stoke rat. He got paid $4 a day to be up there, and he was the highest paid miner. At the beginning of his shift, he would climb a ladder, which would be right here. He's going to take his tools, a lunch pail, and a bucket, and he would not come down until the end of his shift. So chances are he had a relative who worked down here in the mines anywhere between the ages of 8 and 15. They were known as nippers. They got paid 50 cents a day to be down here. So if he needs a new drill still, or if he needs another piece of equipment, he's going to haul it down to one of those children who will attach this air pulley. And then using this air pulley, we can take that equipment all the way to the mine. I will demonstrate this for you guys. It's not going to be very loud, but you're more than welcome to cover your ears if you want.
What is the age group, the youngest person that could work in a mine?
It usually be about 8 years old, a little bit younger. Full time, yeah. Instead of going to school, because it's during the Depression, so instead of going to school getting an education, you go to the mines and you bring home a little bit of money every day.
And then just move on up.
You know? Now, before we take off, this is actually my favorite exhibit. This is an oxidized copper stalactite that's been growing since we've closed down. It's pretty neat.
Yeah.
But once you guys get a chance to take a look at that, we're going to go ahead and take a ride on this man trip. You guys are more than welcome to take a seat wherever you want.
Yeah.
Now, what you guys are about to take a ride on is known as a man trip. Shirley Johnson made the first couple of these man trips as well. However, as he was creating them, patents had just become a thing. So no one really understood what a patent was supposed to do up here in Cripple Creek. But a mining company down in Denver, known as Gardner Denver, they knew exactly what a patent was. And eventually they came up here and they saw Shirley Johnson making these man trips. They realized the idea was not protected, so they stole the idea and they patented it before Shirley Johnson had a chance. This is actually one of the last man trips that Shirley Johnson was able to make, and it actually spent many of the years on the surface as nothing more than a decoration piece. But when we brought it down, we actually took off the original seats. Those were just flat boards. So back then, miners didn't have any of the back support you guys are using right now. Now, it won't be very fast, it's not going to be very loud, but I must remind you to keep your hands and feet inside the car at all times. And please remain seated. At times during this ride, these walls can get pretty narrow.
So it was steam operated then back
Well,
then?
most of the equipment was steam operated, but when they got these, we started using compressed air. So here we have the Oval Office. Now, some of you guys are probably wondering, well, where do they go to the bathroom? Well, those children who got paid 50 cents a day would take empty dynamite boxes, just like you see below that toilet seat, cut holes in those boxes and stack them on top of each other to create what they would call honey pots. Once those honey pots were full, it was also up to those children to clean and empty them out as well. So for 50 cents a day, some of the work you're doing was pretty disgusting. Now this next part of the tunnel is left dark on purpose so you guys can see the benefit of using just one of these headlamps.
Yeah.
Alright, now what you guys have just entered is a junction. And junctions were a series of your crosscuts and drifts with meat, which made them ideal locations to put tool benches, which is this bench right here. This is also the main central hub that connects the Mollie Kathleen mine, the Gold King mine, and then we have the Black Diamond mine, which goes down that tunnel over there. And here in a little bit, you see access to another tunnel, which is called the Dead Horse Tunnel. But once you guys set up the movement, I can you guys take a couple steps away from it and you guys set up on the way. So anytime there's a broken or damaged piece of equipment, it's not going to go back up the circuit. It'll go to one of these junctions, it'll get repaired right on site, so mine will be able to have immediate access to the top. So if you guys remember that first side tunnel we walked down, the Julian Davis drift, that drift ends right here. So a lot of these tunnels lead in giant circles. The tour route that we're walking in is also one giant circle as well, but it wasn't always like that. In 1963, a man by the name of Nick Cox bought this establishment to give tours to it. And originally, the original tour route was down this tunnel, all the way through, and you have to walk back around the same way. But eventually he thought, you know what, let's go ahead and blast down this tunnel and make it so you can just make it one big circle. When this mine was functioning, no miner just wanted to check behind this wall, not even 5 feet. So imagine the surprise on Nick Cox's face when in that first blast, he found a vein right above it. Now, he pulled a lot of gold and silver out of this vein, but he couldn't turn this into any money because he was not a legal mining operation. He'd have to fill out some permits, file for insurance, and get insured by MSHA as well. And it takes a lot of work. Now, the next area we'll be walking into is going to be the display room. I'm not going to have time to talk about all the displays, but you guys are more than welcome to take a look at them all. If you have any questions, please do not hesitate to ask. Keep walking this way. Alright, now the first display that I'm going to be talking about is the Gold King Mine, which is right over here. And if you guys remember that very first crosscut I pointed out to you, it was labeled the Gold King crosscut. That goes into his mine, and this was founded by a rancher named Robert Womack, who liked to prospect in his free time. The problem with Robert Womack was he was an alcoholic as well. It took him 12 years to convince people that there was actually gold up here. So when he was able to establish his gold mine, he didn't keep it for very long. One day on a drinking spree, he sold his mine for $500 in a case of whiskey, And by 1909, he did die penniless, unfortunately.
Wow.
You know, because back then, Cripple Creek became home to 22 millionaires and 10 multi-millionaires. So it was pretty profitable back then. And you can see some of the original samples that he had pulled up. But right next to that display is the Mollie Kathleen gold mine. Now, Mollie Kathleen and her family were originally from a place called Ottumwa, Iowa. Her son and her husband came out here to work in the mining industry first. And eventually his son, or her son, sent her a letter saying it's very beautiful, there's animals you've never seen, you need to come up here to visit, and she finally agreed. One of the animals that we don't have in Iowa is elk, and that's what she saw here was a herd of elk, and she tried to take a closer look at it. Well, they saw her too, and they took off pretty quickly, so she spent some time trying to track the animals down. But eventually she got tired, sat down next to an outcroppings of rock, and broke some off and sent some to her husband. Example A is one of the last samples that we had that she had broken off. But she showed her husband all these rocks that she had found, and he took her to the assayer's office to get their samples assayed. And it turns out that she had a lot of gold bubbles in the rocks. And you can actually see a piece of roasted gold ore right over here in Exhibit G as well. So they said, hey, you got a lot of gold up there. And she went to the mine claim office to start filling out paperwork. However, as I said before, miners are very superstitious. One of the things that they considered bad luck in that time was having any women on your mine claim property. So as you guys can probably imagine, they refused to give her her very own mine. So her husband was a mine claim lawyer, and he had to fight for her right, and they eventually won. Even though she had won that right to mine, nobody wanted to really work for her because it was considered bad luck. Well, those miners that could not meet their quotas of the rest of the mines around us, they got desperate enough to give Mollie Kathleen's mine a try. Out of nearly 500 mining companies, and Mollie was one of the most productive mines that we have in the area. She didn't just make money off of her mine, though. As I mentioned, these tunnels connect to all the mines around us. She would let those other mining companies use their tunnels and mine shafts to haul ore and supplies to and from the surface for a slice of their profits as well. Now, you guys are more than welcome to keep taking a look around, but I'm going to get you guys some samples so you can take some home. However, there's not enough gold in these rocks to retire on, so I don't want to hear about anyone possibly burning down some property trying to get rich. H is a blue gold, it's a solid.
Right, this is gold bubble we were talking about.
Yep, and G.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Here you go, sir. Yep, and you'll see, not all of this will be gold, some that are really with iron pyrite, but yeah, they pretty much have to use a sulfuric acid mix, and then they heat it all up to about 3,000 degrees Fahrenheit into a liquid, and that's how they get the gold out of these rocks.
Yeah, crushing cyanide or mercury back
It's cyanide, that's what it's
then?
cyanide.
Big mic now, then they
Yep.
leaching.
Yep, leach pads. We got some of those up in Newmont. If you guys want to, when we get back up to the surface, I can give you directions so you can guys go look into the strip mining operation they have as well. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and keep walking in this next area. But the tunnel that we're walking through does have a little bit of a little clearance for you tunnel guys, so you might want to watch your head.
Go ahead.
Alright, now as you guys come over here, you're more than welcome to look down this mine shaft under the wind. But please hold on your hard hats, glasses, cameras, anything you do not want to lose to the mine itself. So before we had the mine shafts that you and me came down on, we had these mine shafts known as winzes to get miners to and from the surface and pull it all back up as well. So if you look right behind you, sir, you're going to see the original hand crank that they used to get the miners up and down. Eventually they came out with a steam hoist, and I'll show you how this works in a little bit. So when miners were going down to work in the mines, what they would have to do is put all their supplies in that bucket down there. Then the miners have to stand on and lift that bucket and balance themselves out as they got low down in the mine. This was, of course, before OSHA or MSHA came along, so we're not allowed to do that anymore. Now, when they were pulling up what they call a sinking bucket up in the mine, and it had a load of rock in it, miners had to usually used to manually dump those buckets out of the ore cart right behind it, until an unknown miner came up with this idea known as an apron. Using this apron, we can dump that bucket down and send it right back down the mine a lot easier. I'm going to demonstrate that for you here in a second. So if I could have you guys stand behind that grate, I would really appreciate it. Now, this is an antique steam hoist. It has an inverted compressed air. It still does work if you guys want to take a picture of it. It is a bit of an antique. But it's not going to be very loud either. So as you can see, it'd be very easy to dump that bucket out using the chain at the bottom of the sinking bucket. However, if they let it drop too quickly on the other side, it can sway from side to side. So if you had a tenderfoot sitting next to an ore cart not paying attention, he could get seriously injured that way as well. Now, if you guys wanted a closer visual of the air receiver tank where we store that compressed air down here in the mine, there is another one right behind you. Now, we haven't really talked about the dangerous air that a miner could face down here, and that's carbon dioxide, or what they would call dead air. The reason why we say don't drop anything down this mine shaft is about 20 feet below us. From time to time, there can actually be a pocket of carbon dioxide that sits down there. Now, we're all okay until the barometric pressure drops. When that starts dropping, then the carbon dioxide can fill up the mine. In the old days, miners used to use canaries in cages right here where the bell loop is, so that when the carbon dioxide is filling up the mine, it starts from the bottom, it'll kill the bird first, and then you know it's immediately time to get out of the area. Well, nowadays, because of PETA, we have to use a mine safety lamp. So we'll go ahead and take a look at this lamp right over here. Now, this is our mine safety lamp. So if this flame was out, we know that carbon dioxide seeping up from the bottom. It's no longer safe for us to be down here. We want to go straight back to the mine shaft, which is just a few steps away from us now, because we've just gone in one big circle. Every morning, we send this lamp down here by itself. We keep it down here for a minimum of 2 minutes. Then we bring it back up to the surface. If that flame is still lit, then we send miners down here with digital oxygen meter readers so they can do an accurate reading of the entire mine before we completely shut them out. Now, have any of you guys been into the town of Cripple Creek? No? Well, oh, you guys have? Have you guys seen the donkeys roaming around?
No.
Well, I believe it should be about that time. I don't know.
Soon.
Soon? Well, if they're not out yet, they will be here in a couple weeks. If you want to see them, they're on the outskirts of town. We can point you in the direction. But we usually have donkeys that roam around the town every year. They have free roam. They're protected by the National Historic Society, and they have more rights than the citizens that live in Cripple Creek themselves. But the reason for that is because they were the ancestors of the donkeys that we use down here in the mines, and we'll talk about that over here at the stable. You can see we also did one big circle. You can see a tunnel we walked through the children. This actually used to be the donkey stables to begin with. When we had donkeys down here, they could be born down here, they lived down here, they died down here in almost complete darkness. But eventually, Theodore Roosevelt became president, and he did a mine inspection tour, and he wanted to see what all the fuss was about. He saw the way the donkeys were being treated, thought this was cruel and inhumane, so he passed a legislative law that required us to take every donkey back up to the surface for a minimum of an hour a day, get that fresh air and see the sunlight. That sounds like a good idea, but could you imagine putting a donkey in one of the cages that we wrote down in? It's going to be pretty difficult. So they would actually use this thing to put around the donkey, and they'd tie that thing up to the hook on the bottom of that cage right there. Then they'd hoist the donkey all the way back up to the surface. Now, those donkeys have been down here their entire lives. When we came down, some of you guys would have felt the pressure change where your ears would have popped. The donkeys will also feel that pressure change as well. They're not going to like it, they're going to try and break free. For some of the donkeys that broke free, they can come crashing down here as fast as 100 miles an hour. And it would also be up to those kids to clean up those donkeys as well, so it'd be pretty disturbing for them. But for the donkeys that didn't break free, they've never seen sunlight their entire lives. So at first glance at sunlight, it could burn out their retinas and completely blind the donkeys. So, yeah, so that's why we take such good care of them now, and that's why we eventually got rid of them altogether. So once we got rid of the donkey stables, this became the Miners' Diner, or some would like to call this the Hard Rock Cafe. Now, when miners started eating in this area, they're going to set up their sticks of dynamite. They'll come over here, start eating, and count the blasts. When they're sure all the blasts are done going off, they're going to come over to this switch. That's going to turn on a fan on the other side of this wall, take all the fresh air from the mine shaft, and start funneling it through this chute right here so they can send it back down the mine, get rid of some of that dust, and do it a lot sooner and a lot easier for the miners to get back to it. Now, when you come in here, if you guys want to look to the left, you're going to see a miner's rescue basket. So if a miner was injured or killed down here, they're going to strap you into that basket, and just like the donkeys, they'll tie it to the bottom of that hook and hoist you all the way up to the surface as well. So once you guys have a chance to take a look at that, go ahead and focus your attention on this mine bell code, because this will be the last thing we talk about. But back in the old days, each mine had a different bell code system. So if you're a miner who couldn't meet your quota, next mine you go to could have a completely different set of bell codes. This left room for a lot of accidents. When we started using these mine shafts to haul ore up to the surface, we use what's called an ore skip or an ore bucket. You guys can see that back up on the surface behind the cages if you want to take a look at it. It's a big orange rectangular box. But one day at the end of a miner's shift, he got into that ore skip. He decided to go back up to the surface with that ore. However, he gave the wrong bell code. So that hoist operator took that bucket right up to the surface, threw it in dump position. The miner fell out, and the ton of ore came down on top of that miner, and he did not make it, unfortunately. However, his brother J.W. Stonehouse heard about his accident. He created this universal bell code system, and we still use this system today. When we came down here, I used the command bell, which is right next to those cages. I rang 2-5 for the 10th floor, 3 for people on, run slow, and 2 for lower. So it's a 2-5-3-2 combination. When we go back up to the surface, we just ring 3 for people on and 1 for hoist, and that just takes us back up to the top. But if for some reason those cages weren't there, we would pull on this call bell to let them know that we're waiting on the 10th floor using just a 2-5 combination. So I'm going to demonstrate what that bell is going to sound like. The hoist operator, it's going to be bell, it will be kind of loud, but you'll also see a slight flash because most of the miners back then did have hearing problems. So if they can't hear the bell, they could see the light flash as well. So that was the bell code, and that's what the hoist operator is going to see in here. But one last thing before we go back up to the surface. If for some reason something did happen to these cages, we could not go back up to the surface, there is a backup plan. It's a series of ladders that goes all the way up to the surface. It starts from here. That's 1,000 feet. A good, healthy, average person, depending on their pace without stopping, could take them up to 2 hours to get there. Me personally, I have a stockpile of food and drink down here, so if something does happen, I'm prepared for a long wait.
Good.
Did anybody have any questions before we return to the surface? All right, so we're going to try something a little bit different. We're going to get two different cages, so we have a lot more breathing room this time. We will all go up together. Before we get into these cages, if you want to take a picture below the side, you guys are more than welcome to do that.
What's that? I got it.
You got it?
Yes, thanks.
Yes, love you guys.
Oh, massa. Oh, sorry. Yeah, I guess that would
And then maybe you'll take
be
a picture
cool.
of us.
Us with our nice hats.
Okay, you're great.
Very good.
real too clean, but then they look good.
Thank you. My camera works the same way.
Oh, cool.
If you'll do it.
We're gonna go ahead and put you two and Randall in here, so it'll be 3 in each cage, so we'll have a lot more breathing room.
Thank
I hope I
you.
got y'all in there.
Close enough.
So I'll put three in here.
Yep, you guys get rid of them, I'll put you in here as well.
What do you want, dude?
Just right there's one, yep, you guys got plenty of room, ready,
This one.
Yep, give us a little bit more breathing room.
3, 3, 1.
Yep.
This was a great tour. Thank you. This
Thank
is
you,
awesome.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
You did?
Yep, go ahead, however you guys want.
Yeah, the underground mine still running, or all surface ground?
We have a couple that are running, but right now, like the one that I work on in the off season, is right below the Newmont bleaching facility. And there's a lot of problems, legal problems going on with them. Yeah, so they actually closed down the mine. We have no access to it right now, so we're in a big legal court battle. So there are still some small-time mining operations, but Newmont's pretty much below it.
So you usually mine that direction? You mine mostly, or?
Well, I do this tour and I do some mining, just get some extra cash. Yep.
Yeah.
And then during the off season for about 2.5 months, I go back to Iowa and see my family.
Oh, really?
Yep.
Wow.
They have a lot of snow up here, don't they?
Oh, a lot more snow. Yeah.
So what kind of wages, can I be so rude as to ask, what kind of wages do you earn in a mine?
Well, nowadays,
Yeah.
let's see. The lowest paid mine operator that I've heard of up at Newmont Mine is $18.50 for the first 4 months, and that's
Okay.
just seeing how much gold's in rocks.
I
And you get automatically bumped up to $22 an hour. And so I can't even imagine how much these dump truck drivers get paid.
Yeah.
Still see the water down there.
Oh yeah. Yeah. So there's that red light. So we're now above the town of Cripple Creek.
So how'd they do these mines? They just started digging and hoped they hit stuff, or they drilled?
Well, if you see some of those like half-dug holes around, those are prospector holes.
Yeah.
And they pretty much take a core sample from the bottom of that hole. It's not very big. If they're thinking something worth finding, then yeah, they just start digging down.
They ever core drill much in this mine at all?
We've done a couple samples, but we haven't done any lately. Now, the good thing about this cage is we may be the last ones on, but we're always the first ones off.
Put your hard hats right there in the bucket. If you got jackets, go ahead and land on the rack.
Oh, shit.
Now these are your tickets back.
Thanks.
This is just proof you guys made other holes. So you can tell them. You'll see a yellow truck bed. You can just walk out of the stairs and we're driving that mining operation as well.
Exactly.
Yep.
That would be cool. Repeat what you just said.
So take this right.
What was that?
Take this road up here. There's a dump truck bed up there. Stop and look over the edge of this thing.
Okay.
Bye.